You ever have one of those moments where everything you've ignored, excused, or tried to forgive finally explodes in your face? That was me 2 months ago, standing in the front yard of my own damn house in Wichita Falls while my mother and sister, faces full of fake concern and unearned righteousness, told my wife and me that we should move out. So my sister, her unemployed husband, and their 6 screaming kids could move in. Just like that. As if my home, my peace, my marriage was some piece of property they had squatters' rights to. My name's Rob. I'm 44, and for way too long, I played the loyal son and the dependable big brother. I paid the price for it in ways I didn't even recognize until recently. But now, after all the spying, all the lies, all the petty attempts to sabotage the best thing that ever happened to me, my wife Sarah, I'm finally done. I didn't come to that decision lightly. In fact, it's embarrassing how long I let them chip away at her and at us before I finally took a stand. Maybe I thought I could keep the peace. Maybe I was scared to draw the line because once you draw it, there's no going back. But they made the decision for me the day they showed up uninvited, bags in hand, demanding we move out. And let me tell you something. There's nothing quite like seeing the people who raise you look at you like you're the traitor for not setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. Sarah tried to play nice at first. She always did. She's the kind of woman who smiles through discomfort and gives people way more chances than they deserve. When we first got married, she really made an effort with my family, invited my mom to brunch, offered to babysit my sister's kids, even helped clean my mom's house once when my sister couldn't make it. But none of it mattered. Not to them. They treated her like she was some kind of threat, like she'd stolen me. And I think that's exactly how they saw it. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't rushing over to fix my sister's latest disaster or dropping everything to help mom rearrange furniture at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. I had someone else now. Someone who loved me, respected me, and wanted to build a real life together. And they hated her for it. They started small, snide comments behind her back, asking me if I was sure I wanted to go through with the wedding. Then it escalated. My sister once called Sarah a gold digger, which is hilarious considering Sarah makes more than I do. Then there was the time my mom accidentally spilled wine on her wedding dress during the fitting. Said she was just clumsy. That dress cost us 2 paychecks. I should have cut them off then. I should have defended Sarah like she deserved. But I didn't. I told myself it would get better, that they'd come around. That family tension was just something everyone dealt with. But the truth? I was a coward. I watched Sarah cry in the bathroom after our engagement dinner because my mom kept calling her sweetheart in that condescending tone she uses when she's being cruel under the guise of politeness. I watched my sister feed lies to our relatives about Sarah being controlling, about her changing me. And I let it slide, over and over, until it slid us right to the edge of a cliff I didn't even know we were standing on. It all came to a head on a Sunday afternoon in April. Sarah and I were finally settling into our groove. We just paid off the last bit of credit card debt from the wedding. Our garden was blooming like something out of a magazine, and we were talking, really talking, about starting a family. For the first time in a long time, I felt grounded, like maybe all the nonsense from my side of the family was finally quieting down. And then my sister showed up at the front door with her kids trailing behind her like ducklings. No warning, no heads up, just chaos. She barely waited to be invited in before launching into her usual pity monologue. How her husband still couldn't find work, translation. He'd rather rot on the couch than lift a finger. How the landlord was raising the rent again. How everything was so hard and no one ever helps her. I nodded politely, offered her a glass of water, and made the mistake of asking, "So what are you thinking of doing?" That's when she dropped it. Said mom thought it'd be a good idea if she and the kids moved in with us for a while. That it was only fair since we had space and she needed stability for the kids. And when I looked stunned, she added that mom had already agreed and was just waiting for us to do the right thing. Istället blinking like I det mishet. But she was already texting on her phone, probably updating mom on her progress. Sarah came out of the kitchen, towel in hand, and froze mid-step. She didn't say a word, but I could feel the tension pour off her like a summer storm. And just like that, I realized something. This wasn't a request. It was an ultimatum, one wrapped in guilt and sugar-coated in family loyalty. But underneath, it was pure entitlement. I don't remember sitting down. 1 second I was standing there trying to process what my sister had just said, and the next I was on the couch, staring blankly while Sarah quietly returned to the kitchen, probably so she didn't say something she'd regret. My sister kept talking, oblivious to how insane she sounded. She said the kids could take the upstairs guest room. She and her husband could sleep on an air mattress in the den. Said it wouldn't be forever, just until they got back on their feet. though she couldn't say when that might actually happen. Maybe a few months, maybe longer. And she ended it with a line that stuck in my head like a thorn. You and Sarah don't even have kids yet. What do you need all this space for? That was it. The breaking point. That one sentence, so casual, so dismissive, snapped whatever thread I've been holding on to. She didn't just want a favor. She believed we owed her. That Sarah's comfort didn't matter. That our privacy, our plans, our life didn't matter. And worst of all, that our childless marriage was somehow less real, less deserving. As if the absence of toys on the floor and juice boxes in the fridge made our home some community resource for the needy. I stood up slowly. My legs were shaking, but not from fear, from restraint. I told her this wasn't going to happen, that we were not turning our home into her fallback plan, that I loved her, but I loved my wife more. And if she couldn't understand that, then maybe she'd understand the next part better. She needed to leave. Right then, no more discussion. Her eyes widened, not with guilt, with offense. Like I was the one being unreasonable. She didn't leave right away. Oh no. She stood there, hands on hips, jaw clenched like I had just insulted her very existence. One of her kids started tugging on her sleeve, asking something about snacks, and she snapped at him without breaking eye contact with me. That's when Sarah came back in, calm but firm, and placed a glass of water on the table without a word. Just the way she did it told you everything you needed to know. She was done playing polite. My sister turned to her like she was about to unload, and that's when I stepped between them. Physically, literally, between my wife and the woman who'd made it her life's mission to tear her down. I told her again, slower this time, that she had to leave. I didn't care where she went. To mom's. To a shelter. To a motel. That wasn't my problem anymore. And I didn't say it with cruelty. I said it with the exhaustion of a man who had nothing left to give. I'd spent years bailing her out, defending her, pretending that blood automatically means trust. Behind her, her husband was finally dragging in from the car, carrying one suitcase and a look that said he'd assumed this was all a done deal, that she'd bulldoze her way through like always. He didn't even say hi to me, just asked my sister which room they were getting. And that was when Sarah laughed. Quietly. Not out of humor, but disbelief. Like she was watching a clown show crash into a brick wall. Then came the yelling. From my sister, of course. The accusations. The guilt. The recycled lines about family and sacrifice and you owe us. How I'd abandoned them. How I'd changed since marrying Sarah. She even threw in that Sarah must be manipulating me. That I wasn't this selfish before. And I just stood there, letting her rant until she said something that made my blood run cold. She said I was just like Dad. Now, you don't know what that means, but for me, it hit like a truck. Our dad bailed when I was 10. Packed up his things one night after a fight with Mom and vanished. Left her with 2 kids, a mountain of bills, and enough emotional wreckage to drown us all. I spent most of my life trying to be the opposite of him. Stable, loyal, present. But in my sister's eyes, me setting a boundary was the same as disappearing. That's how deep the manipulation went. I looked at Sarah, her eyes steady, her hand resting gently on the counter, and I realized that if I didn't stop this now, they'd take her from me. Not with a bang, but by 1,000 tiny cuts. And I'd be the one handing them the knife. So I raised my voice, not in anger, but so she'd hear it over the chaos she created. I told her I wasn't Dad, that I didn't leave my family, I built one, that what she was doing wasn't asking for help, it was demanding obedience, and that I wasn't going to let guilt make me give up the one person who had never once made me feel like I had earned her love. That was when she started crying. Not the kind of crying that comes from sorrow. The kind that comes when a bully realizes their tricks don't work anymore. She said Mom was going to be furious, that I was choosing a woman over my blood. And I told her she was right. 3 days passed. Not a word. Not from my mom, not from my sister. I thought maybe, just maybe, the message had landed. That for once, they'd realized the door was closed. I even let myself feel a little relief. Until Saturday morning. I was out front trimming the hedges when I saw the minivan turn onto our street. You know how you can just feel bad news coming? That sinking, crawling cold that moves up your spine before your brain catches up? It was them. My sister. Her husband. 6 kids packed like sardines in the back seat. The van was full. Boxes stacked in the back. Garbage bags tied with cords. A mattress strapped to the roof with bungee cords so frayed they looked like they'd snap if you so much as sneezed. They weren't just visiting. They were moving in. I didn't move. Just stood there with the trimmers in my hand, frozen in place as they pulled into the driveway like they owned the place. The kids jumped out first, already running toward the porch with juice boxes and a tablet playing cartoons at full volume. Her husband popped the trunk, started hauling out bags. Not one of them looked at me. Not one of them asked. Sarah opened the front door, still in her robe, coffee in hand. I will never forget the look on her face. Not anger, not even surprise. Just tired. The kind of tired that sits behind your eyes when you've hoped too many times and been let down every single one. She set her mug down on the porch rail and said only 5 words. "You're not doing this again." I walked toward the van, calm as I could manage. My sister finally noticed me and smiled like nothing had happened. Said they decided to take me up on the offer, that it'd only be temporary. That mom had even helped them pack. I told her to put everything back in the van. She blinked, thought I was joking. Then Sarah came down the steps, arms crossed over her chest. And this time, I stood behind her. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. She looked my sister in the eye and said, as kindly as anyone could in that moment, that this was our home, that we had said no, that their lack of planning did not make this an emergency for us, that we owed them nothing. It was the first time I'd seen my wife raise her voice. And somehow, she didn't even sound angry, just done. Her husband muttered something under his breath, started grabbing the bags again, like we were being unreasonable. The kids whined. My sister started crying, said she had nowhere else to go. That mom had promised we'd help, that it wasn't fair. I just stood there, saying nothing, because Sarah had already said the thing I never had the guts to. We were done being the backup plan. Eventually they left, tossed the bags back in a van. One kid still crying because he'd already claimed the upstairs guest room. My sister wouldn't look at me, just got in the passenger seat and stared out the window like we had broken her heart. But here's the thing, I didn't feel guilty. Not this time. They were gone. The street was quiet. Sarah went back inside without a word, the door clicking shut behind her like punctuation at the end of a long, ugly sentence. I stayed outside a while longer, hands on my hips, staring at the marks their van tires had left in our driveway. And that's when my phone rang. It was Mom. Of course it was. She didn't even wait for me to say hello. Just launched in, voice sharp and shaking with that blend of outrage and disbelief she used to weaponize when we were kids, when the truth didn't go her way. She said my sister had called her sobbing, that the kids were upset, that I'd embarrassed the family, that Sarah had corrupted me. I stayed silent. So she doubled down, said she didn't know what kind of man I'd become, but this wasn't the son she raised, that I'd turned my back on blood, that Sarah was driving a wedge between us, and I was too weak to see it. That family meant sacrifice. That word hit me harder than I expected, because I had sacrificed, for years, my money, my time, my peace, my marriage almost. I thought about all the holidays where Sarah and I sat in silence while Mom and my sister whispered in the kitchen. About the time Sarah baked a pie from scratch and Mom accidentally left it outside overnight. About the wedding pictures my sister cropped Sarah out of on Facebook. And yet, I stayed loyal. I stayed quiet. So I finally asked, "Mom, what have you ever sacrificed for me?" She paused. That 2 seconds of stunned silence told me she didn't have an answer. Not one that didn't sound like guilt. Then she switched tactics. She said if I didn't want to lose my family, I had better apologize. That we needed to fix this before it became permanent. That she didn't raise us to treat each other this way. And I told her the truth. That she didn't raise us at all. She enabled one of us, neglected the other, and called it balance. That she let my sister sink deeper into irresponsibility while blaming me for pulling away when I couldn't breathe under the weight of everyone else's problems. She went quiet again. And then she cried. Big, dramatic sobs. Said I was cruel. Said Sarah had poisoned me. Said she didn't recognize me anymore. And for once, I didn't rush to comfort her. I told her I wasn't interested in recognition. I was interested in respect. And if she couldn't offer that, not just to me, but to my wife, then this was where the relationship paused. Not ended. Paused. Because unlike them, I wasn't slamming the door. I was just finally closing it. Gently, but firmly. The days that followed were quiet in a way I didn't trust. You'd think I'd feel relief after finally standing my ground, after putting a stop to years of manipulation, guilt trips, and emotional landmines. But what I felt wasn't relief, it was stillness. The kind of eerie quiet that settles over a field after a tornado, when everything's technically over, but the air still feels charged. Like something's waiting to strike again. Sarah was different too. Not withdrawn, not cold. Just cautious. Like she was waiting to see if I meant it this time. If I'd really chosen us. And honestly, I couldn't blame her. We'd been through more than I ever admitted to myself. It wasn't just about my sister or my mom. It was about all the times I left Sarah to fend for herself emotionally while I played the peacekeeper with people who never once gave us peace in return. One night, Maybe 4 days after the confrontation, she set 2 mugs of tea on the table and asked, gently, if I was okay. I told her the truth, that I didn't know, that I felt like I just jumped off a building without checking if there was a net. She nodded, said she understood. Then she asked if I regretted it. That question caught me off guard, because part of me did. Not because I missed them, God no, but because I hated that it had come to this. I hated that I had to choose between the people who raised me and the person I wanted to build a future with. I hated that love, for some people, came with conditions and consequences. But then I looked at her, really looked at her, at the woman who stuck with me through passive-aggressive holidays, through lies and slights and silence. The woman who made a home out of a place they tried to invade. And I said no. No, I didn't regret it. She didn't say anything for a while. Just reached across the table, wrapped her fingers around mine, and squeezed. Not hard, just enough. And in that moment, I realized something that still makes my throat tighten when I think about it. This was the first time in our marriage where I protected her. Not just with words, not with apologies after the fact, but in real time, when it counted. The weight of that nearly broke me, because I had made her fight alone for so long, thinking I was being neutral, when really, I was abandoning her with a front row seat to a war she never asked to be part of. And she stayed. She stayed. Not because she was weak or scared or didn't have options. She stayed because she saw something in me I hadn't even earned yet. But now, I was ready to be the man she thought I was. The real silence came after the echoes faded. No angry texts, no long voicemails, no dramatic doorstep visits. Just silence. My mom stopped calling. My sister went dark on social media. It was like we'd been quietly excommunicated from a church we never asked to join in the first place. At first, I kept waiting for the next shoe to drop, for someone to show up at my job, for a flying monkey cousin to message me with some family is everything guilt bomb. But nothing came, and eventually that stillness stopped feeling like pressure and started feeling like permission. Permission to breathe, to sleep in on a Sunday morning without wondering if I'd be guilted into a last-minute emergency favor, to go to the grocery store without just picking up a few things for mom because she happened to call while I was out, to spend time with Sarah without glancing at my phone every 5 minutes, waiting for someone else to need something from me. And maybe that's what scared me most. How good it felt. Because once you get used to dysfunction, peace feels unnatural. Like you're doing something wrong by resting. Like your value was tied to how exhausted you let yourself become. But the peace? It stayed. Sarah and I started rediscovering our life. Not just the logistics, who takes the trash out, who's watering the succulents, but the real stuff. We went for walks again, late at night, barefoot on the back patio. We made pancakes for dinner, just because. We pulled out board games we hadn't touched in years and stayed up past midnight laughing like the couple we were before all the noise. I caught her looking at me differently, not in fear or frustration, but in quiet trust, like she could finally exhale around me. And I won't lie to you, some nights I lay awake thinking about what I'd lost. Not the relationships themselves, but the illusion of them. The stories I told myself about what family should be. The idea that no matter how broken something is, it's your job to keep holding it together. Turns out, some things are supposed to fall apart. And when they do, the right people stay. Sarah stayed. That truth was worth every slammed door, every tear, every uncomfortable conversation. Because for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't surviving a family dynamic, I was living my own. It had been almost a month. Long enough for the silence to settle. Long enough for Sarah and I to feel like the dust had truly cleared. We were okay, better than okay. We were healing, slowly but honestly. So when I saw the envelope in our mailbox, I almost didn't open it. There was no return address, just my name handwritten on the front in familiar script. For a second, I thought it might be a card, an olive branch. Maybe my mom finally realizing what she'd done. But it wasn't from her. It was from my sister. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, torn from a notebook. No greeting, no date, just a wall of writing, tight and frantic. She said she didn't recognize me anymore. Said I'd changed. That Sarah had cut me off from everyone who ever loved me. That I was being manipulated, controlled. That she had forgiven me, even though I didn't ask for forgiveness. That she missed our bond and still believed family finds its way back. But then came the real reason for the letter. She asked, casually, like it was no big thing, if I would co-sign on a lease for her. So the place was nice. Said it was only temporary. Said they just needed help getting started. That phrase again, getting started. Like we hadn't been hitting reset on her life every 2 years since we were 20. I folded the letter neatly and slid it back into the envelope. Left it on the counter and didn't say a word about it for 3 days. Not because I didn't know what to do, because I did. I was just grieving in my own way. Not for her, not even for the relationship we never really had, but for the part of me that kept hoping things could be different. That one day, she'd stop taking and start showing up. That love would finally go both ways. But I finally said it out loud to Sarah, over coffee on a Tuesday morning. I'm done chasing people who never wanted to be caught. And Sarah, God bless her, just nodded. Didn't say, I told you so. Didn't gloat. Just reached across the table and took my hand like she had on that first night, when the house had gone quiet and I still wasn't sure I'd done the right thing. Only this time, I knew I had. I didn't reply to the letter. I didn't call. I didn't text. And when she sent a follow-up message a week later, asking if I'd at least think about it, I didn't answer that either. Because silence, when you've spent your whole life screaming for validation, is the loudest response of all.